Welcome back to Solutionary TV. I am your host, Dr. Tatiana, and I want to express gratitude that you are here, that you are spending the time investing in yourself, that you're investing in alternative media, and you recognize the importance of giving it airtime and questioning the mainstream narrative and doing some critical thinking. We're all shaking out of cognitive dissonance on this one, and tonight is no exception. We are super excited to be welcoming the Watchman, the Earth Watchman, also known as Michael, who has been doing some very dedicated work for going on 12 plus years now. He has been watching as an ardent advocate, protector, and watchman of the Earth. Some of these changes, both the Earth as well as air anomalies. He receives, I don't know how many submissions every single day, but I know that getting a hold of him was no small task to bring him on here for you. He's got an amazing following via YouTube, very devoted, almost 200,000 plus, and I'm sure that that's going to continue to grow with tonight and other opportunities for promotion. But we're grateful for his work, and I want to welcome him now. Michael, thanks so much for joining us this evening.
Thank you for having me.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
What does it take, Michael, to go from being someone who's observing the world and having maybe even an intuitive sense about some changes going on with our Earth, with seismic activity, geological activity, some of this aerial phenomenon? What does it take to move that to a passion, to be as devoted as you clearly are in the offerings that you are now providing the public with your website that is just up to date with the most recent seismic activity and solar flares and Shumannic resonance? It's amazing. What drove this passion, Michael?
Curiosity. I wanted to know how it all works.
Mm-hmm.
And I still want to know. And you know what? I don't think a person can live long enough to fully grasp what all this means. And curiosity is the main motivator. And I have a thirst for knowledge that I don't think is quenchable. Mm-hmm. So every day I study, I try to teach myself something new. And yes, I'm definitely a watchman for sure. That's what I do. I watch, and I've been doing it for years. Everything from buoys in the ocean, monitoring the seafloor, to, like you said, clouds, space, the sun, solar flares, CMEs, tracking CMEs when they're going to interact with Earth's magnetic shields, the orientation of Earth's magnetic shields, if they're going to produce auroras, I've just everything that involves creation. I want to understand how it works, and I try, and along that road, I've learned a lot, about how this works and what to expect from time to time, and I've seen an increase in the global energy of Earth, and things are in an uptick for sure, with regard to weather, with regard to a downsize in, say, activity in the ozone. There's more UV coming in. I just got a UV reading today from Beaverton, Oregon, which is south of Portland by 20 miles, of 15.
Now, help our listeners really understand what was the norm. What was the status quo up until recently when we went from having kind of a yellow sun to nearly a white sun? And we'll just give them a little bit of backstory on that.
Well, that's kind of when I started noticing because when I was a kid growing up, the sun was orange and you could enjoy an afternoon outside,
Sure.
And now it's considerably different. And the younger generation, it's hard for them to resonate with that orange sun because mostly all they know is the white sun. Mm-hmm. And it's not the way it was, Mm-hmm. So I started measuring the UV. Typically, UV is higher at the equator of Earth, where the Earth is, where the bulge of the planet is. Mm-hmm. And the more UV, the more rain you have. That's why the tropics have tropical rainforests and tropical storms originate from the equators because the UV is higher.
Right.
Well, now we're seeing bigger storms in the higher latitudes because the UV is higher in the higher latitudes, to where normally it was not. The higher up you go or the lower you go in latitudes, the lower the UV. Well, now we're getting, like today, I got a 15 UV from Beaverton, Oregon. Mm-hmm. Typically up in that latitude, you're talking 42 to 45 degree latitude. 6 would be a good day. 6.
Wow.
So, yeah.
So we're over doubling at this point. And have you been watching this trend? Has it been continuing to trend up, or do we see some dips, Michael?
it's trending up because what we did last year was establish a set of numerical values with respect to our instruments that we use. So we can have now we have a base to go by because last year we established the base. So now we're comparing this year's numerical values to last year's. And this year's numbers are 30 to 40% higher in some cases compared to last year's readings with the same instruments at the same location. So you can argue, well, yeah, so you can argue, well, you're measuring total UV opposed to UV index. Okay, that's fine. Well, now we're measuring based off of our numerical values, and they're considerably higher. And that's also been confirmed by a team of scientists from Harvard. So they have also,
I've been super impressed by how beautifully you reference a lot of, the anomalous activity that we're noticing. And I don't even know if we're going to be able to keep calling it anomalous because if you really look at your website, there is a general trend towards massive change at almost a sentient Earth level. There's a whole lot of soulful moving and shaking going on, and there's a few really hot topics going on right now. I don't want to take away from any of the links or the itemization you've done on your website. It's just really impeccably put together. But tell our viewing audience what really is starting to trend in the most obvious way so that you've been able to draw some correlations with.
The global Schumann resonance seemed to, or it's over the last year and a half, it's trending upwards, which means Earth has a frequency like everything has a frequency. Humans have a frequency. Everything is about frequencies, and it begins at the cellular level. And Earth's frequency it's higher. It's becoming more amplified. Some days it's greater than others. That's a trend I'm noticing. I don't know if it's probably tied in somehow with the UV. Has to be. UV is a frequency. We're also receiving UVC at ground level now, which nobody even knows how that's going to affect the planet because it's never been measured at ground level. So we don't know what to expect. But when we see, these bigger storms all over the globe and a year's worth of rain in 24 hours. Who's ever heard of that? It's because of these amplified frequencies. Earth's energy level is up. We're seeing volcanoes erupt in dramatic fashion right now. And they're going to continue. Unfortunately, I think it's because the frequency's up.
Right.
The sun is different and originates from the sun, in my opinion. Changes the frequency of Earth. The energy outputs are different. So it's an adjustment. I think everything will work out, but it's an adjustment. These Earth changes are very, very real.
Now, as you're studying some of the data, are you also doing some of the historical references that have more to do with astrophysics? I have spent enough time on your website, and I have really enjoyed your YouTube channel, which is just doing phenomenally well. But as part of my background as a PhD in philosophy, studying the mystery schools and some of the ancient texts and beliefs, we're in the Great Year, and part of the movement of our solar system and our Earth in correlation to its trajectory around the sun and where we are in the center, as being closer to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, we're told that there is this band of frequencies that is going to continue to persist and create a lot of changes. And my understanding is as the Schumannic resonance responds and we have interplanetary climate change, if we're actually looking at NASA and other documents that are a little bit more highbrow and not making the mainstream narrative, it also is forcing up the energy of all sentient life on the planet and maybe even other spheres, but definitely here, and it affects us personally. Is that all part of what you ascribe to also, Michael? And tell us your thoughts on that.
It is, of course. And the website was designed with years of personal experience. As my wife, calls me a watchman, and I am. I guess by textbook I probably am, but that website is literally a watchman's website, and that's what I've done for years. But that's just a small portion of my day. But right there, I put everything on one page, basically. So if you really want to learn and you want to understand these connections, Watchman 101, that's it, basically. And you'll see trends and you'll see patterns and you'll see, okay, today, when the K index was at 4, I noticed the cosmic rays were this, the Schumann resonance was this. Back in 2012, I observed something that I still have a hard time even mentally wrapping my mind around to this day. But it was something very unique in the sky, Hydra. And during the time I saw this thing, I finally, through study, figured out what it was. It was a pulsar. I don't know how I even saw it. I wasn't looking for it, but it was a pulsar or some sort of a neutron star, and I didn't need a telescope. And during that time frame, the things that I study every day, I noticed trends, a very dramatic upward trend in the cosmic rays of Earth. The
Mm-hmm.
magnetosphere of Earth was doing some very unusual things. Um, all kinds of energies around the Earth had changed dramatically as this thing was visible.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that does have something to do with being closer to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Like you said, the energies have changed, photon belts. I mean, you could go on and on and on and on and on about that, but it's very real. It's
Mm-hmm.
very, very real.
You also
So,
mentioned having being part of a group in our previous conversation that actually is maybe ordained or sanctioned for those that are watchmen. Can you give us a little bit of the background that you've had with that and how maybe that prompted your being so thorough and complete in your approach to educate the public?
well, that came from the teachers I've had. I've had some good teachers, some good mentors, because whenever I wanted to study, and began this, like I said, this thirst that I can't quench for knowledge. Um,
I
I
understand that.
you do. I'm sure you do. You look for. I look for the old wise people that have been here much longer than me. And I listened to every story in great detail, and they taught me detail. Pay attention to the details. And they explained things to me in a way that I could understand because they
Hmm.
wanted me to learn. So I try to convey those same types of messages to the people that want to listen and the people that want to learn. So I try to be, and again, I owe a lot of that to my wife because I'll talk to her sometimes, and when her head starts to slant, she'll tell me to start talking, in ways that's easier to understand. So I get that. So and that's the way that my teachers taught me. We
Hmm.
have a team that we've developed called Team UV. That's a team that's just kind of assembled by default. It was again people that wanted to learn.
Hmm.
Nobody was forced or asked to do anything. They approached me, and anybody was welcome.
Hmm.
Nobody wasn't welcome. If you wanted to participate and you wanted to learn about the UV of Earth, and you just had any type of motivation, you're welcome. So everybody that's a member of Team UV has contributed to its knowledge that it's offering the public now. And we started last year, and right now I think we're up to 12 to 18 members. Some are consistent, some are, and that's okay. I understand your life and your family's first. And if you can't do a reading someday, that's perfectly fine. Nobody's going to hold it against you. So we just do them now Monday, Wednesday, and Friday because now, as you mentioned earlier, the correspondence is on a daily basis. It's pretty good size.
Hmm.
So in order to manage that, I still measure the UV. In fact, my instruments are right up above me. I still measure every day, but I don't necessarily put together a video every day.
Hmm.
It's becoming I don't know. It's just not necessary unless there's an anomalous reading, and
Hmm.
then I will do a video. But just the routine, like today, I'll do a video Monday, and then Wednesday and Friday. So yeah, we've got about I don't know 18 members. Sometimes they submit, sometimes they don't. But some are very very dependable. They do every single day, very thorough. They do a great job. So,
Well,
and we've learned from it.
let's draw some correlations, Michael. Sorry to interrupt you. I realize that we could spend time on the UVC and what is being experienced with this collation, which I think is extremely important because we have a lot of folks that don't know how to best, advocate for their health under these circumstances and use some proper protection from the sun. Can you just briefly touch on what we are experiencing with such high UV and how you would recommend some protection? And then we've got so many great topics. I want to jump on some of the other aspects of your data.
Sure. Just basically at solar noon, anytime solar noon is basically noon, in your local area. Um, I see the best way to explain it is if you can't see your shadow outside, it's a good idea to protect yourself from the sun in general on any given day. That means the sun is straight above your head.
Mm-hmm.
That's solar noon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you can't see your shadow, when you can see your shadow long and far, you're good. But if you can't see your shadow, it's a good idea to carry an umbrella. That's why umbrellas were invented. They weren't invented for rain. They were invented for cosmic rain, for sun, for shade. So carry an umbrella. That's your best line of defense. You use sunblock if you're in a pool, but don't put anything on your skin that you wouldn't put on your morning toast.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're spraying chemicals on your skin, it goes right into your bloodstream.
Right.
So it's just like drinking it. So have that in mind. That's why I use that same picture every day, and I don't get any type of kickback for that. That's the best UV protection you can get. That sunblock that I show every time I do a UV video, and that's why that's the best that you can put on your body.
Okay.
It's simple as that. That's the best, at least in my studies, and I've done the studies, and that's the best you can use for you as far as protection from the sun and keeping your body good. You don't want to put stuff on your body that you wouldn't need.
Right. And I don't know that our entire audience, other than just kind of the rhetoric that we've always heard that you need to wear sunscreen because, you know, in various areas, you're going to have a higher UV. Here in North Carolina, it's rather high. I lived in Colorado before. It was probably one of the sunniest, highest UV states in the union. When we start having a level 14 where 6 would be more of an average in Oregon, what does that mean for Oregon residents? Are they more prone to dangerous rays that could be cancer producing? Is there some internal damage that can take place? We don't want to create any fear mongering, but education is key to preparation. So can you give them an idea of what they would really expect to protect themselves better, or what the threat could be, Michael?
Well, you can easily protect yourself. Like I always wear long sleeves. I use the real thin ones, not like this hot one I have on today, but I always wear long sleeves. But to protect yourself, like people in Oregon, they're going to feel it. They're going to notice a difference because they're going to feel like they're in the tropics. So they're going to naturally migrate to shade. They're going to hydrate. You got to hydrate more. There's no doubt about it, because I think that's what's going on with the wildlife creatures. They're not used to this higher UV, and they're out in it all day long, unlike us. So they're all of a sudden getting extreme dehydration, and they don't know what's going on. So that's one of my theories. That's what's going on with the wildlife. But humans will naturally migrate to safer conditions. The biggest thing is crops and vegetation. They're not going to adapt well to these 14 and 15 UVs, because that's something that's more of a tropical type of UV. And things in the 45-degree latitude aren't necessarily tropical. And I mean, I know plants that we planted here just recently. My son had a little plant out back that we watered every day, and I even put up an umbrella to keep it protected. Once the sun got it, within one day it was gone.
Wow.
And leaves are solar panels. That's where we got the idea for solar panels. Leaves harness sunlight and turn it into energy. Right. That's how we got the idea. Well, when these leaves out here don't want to harness the sunlight anymore, and they shrivel up and turn brown, and you're watering them every day like you're supposed to, then it's not getting the right light.
Right.
So,
and we don't necessarily have the ability to protect every aspect of our planet or the wildlife, but we do need to be aware that things are changing and accommodations need to be made. Shifts need to be made in our consciousness so that we can be a lot more attuned. Let's talk about the wildlife. You have had, you've got an entire link on your website speaking to a lot of submissions that you're getting every week and maybe every day. What's going on with our wildlife, Michael?
I don't know. It was the viewers that brought it to me, and I listen because I want to learn, and they brought it to me. And once I saw the pattern start to develop, I developed a map. I put a map together because I'm looking for trends. And there wasn't a trend. It was just everywhere, especially throughout the United States. So I know it's more than likely a global trend, but I noticed it went to almost all 50 states rather quickly. And again, like I mentioned, with humans will naturally migrate to a safer area because they'll feel a need to. Intuitively, like the animals right now, they're feeling something intuitively. They feel something is not resonating well with them. Like I've noticed geese up on rooftops of homes. I'm just using that as one of dozens of examples, but I've seen that multiple times. And people that are around geese all the time, they said that they've never seen geese on top of the building or on top of their house. Sometimes they're just sitting off in a parking lot off of the soil. They're sitting on an asphalt parking lot that's totally empty, and cars are driving by and they're just sitting there. But birds landing in people's hands, animals trying to get in people's homes and their cars. I think they sense the frequency change. Maybe when the Schumann resonance is up, I've tried to connect that dot and I can't. It doesn't seem to, I don't know, it doesn't seem to, I can't find the pattern yet. I will, trust me, I'm working on it, but I can't find a connection to anything real obvious. Like, okay, a day when the Schumann resonance spikes up to 43, and it should be around 8, or 7.86, and it goes up to 43 for 4 hours. Well, did I get a bunch of reports of wildlife anomalies? Well, no, I didn't. Now, they may trickle in later, but it's I'm not seeing a real obvious pattern just yet. But I do think that dehydration is one of the things.
And the extreme weather patterns. I know that you posted from those that had submitted when we had the freakish cold weather. What was it, the end of last month, beginning of last month? And we had animals that had come out of hibernation or gone into active spring mode, and they were not greeted with a spring like Earth to be able to build nests and habitate. It makes me wonder, as we're getting closer to understanding quantum models, that we just don't have the instrumentation yet, Michael, to understand what might be creating different brainwave states in some of the wildlife. And we know that even our own planet and human beings have been behaving more erratically, less predictably, more violently. A lot of, challenges with just getting grounded in what our goals are and what we're creating with one another. So, I think that technology is, at least as it's being made available, is catching up. Being able to draw those correlations, and I have full faith you're going to be able to do it. It's been really the most complete resource that I've found. Let's talk about what's going on with the things that can be collated, and you are able to see how one thing compounds another. We've got a lot of active volcanoes that you're reporting on your site right now, and a lot of correlating earthquakes. Tell us what you've been able to see and what some of our viewers can be aware of so they can better prepare.
Well, there's a lot of things. I don't know that there's one real heavy right now. There is one thing I've been watching since the first of the year, and that's our planetary position with respect to the sun. All the planets are going to be on the right-hand side of the sun, which is 180 degrees, and we have 360 degrees to share. So that has to mean something. I know it does. And I think that I really and truly believe that. So right now we are entering that phase, and we're going to be in that phase until the end of August. And I do think that the energies of the planet are going to increase exponentially. They already are. I'm seeing it in different areas. Mayotte off of Southeast Africa is a chain of volcanoes that are showing signs of life, and they haven't done anything for years. And they're all of a sudden starting to wake up. And so we're seeing a lot of change with regard to earthquakes, volcanoes. It could be our planetary position with respect to all of the planets being on the right-hand side of the sun for, oh my goodness, over 10 weeks, like I said, until the end of August. So that's coming up. I have noticed some variances in the magnetic shields of Earth. They are changing some. You want to know something that's, and again, I can't connect the dots here, but I've noticed a change. Now, it could be faulty instruments, but one morning I get up early, and I was up at 4:30, and this guy sends me a random text. I'm not even sure who the guy was. Don't remember now. It was about a month and a half ago, and he said, check your elevation if you can. And I'm like, okay, I'm just my first sip of coffee. So I go to my phone and I check my elevation, and lo and behold, it was way off. And
really?
I'm not going to say yes, and I'm not going to say how much because I don't want to alarm people. But it was way off, and I'm like, man, that's weird. Who was this guy, and why did he tell me to check the elevation? So I kept checking it every 5-10 minutes, and it slowly, over the course of 30 to 40 minutes, went back to 1,250 where we normally are.
Interesting.
Yes, ma'am, but it was way off. So now, ever since then, that's another thing I do every day is I check the elevation. And believe it or not, it could be something to do with Earth's magnetics. It could be faulty instruments. But if mine is doing the same as his, and he's in Ohio and I'm in, Arizona, and he's noticing a difference and I'm noticing a difference, then I doubt very seriously that it's both of our instruments are wrong. But I have noticed a difference in that. Yes, believe it or not, elevation. We don't notice it though. We go on about our day, everything's fine, but we're seeing this really unusual, uh, these extreme weather patterns. We're seeing, like I saw for the first time 36 or 48 inches of hail last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's like, how is that even possible?
Mm-hmm.
So to grasp some of these things is even hard for me. And I watch this stuff every single day, and it's amazing. It's an amazing process. It's an amazing transformation process. But one of the most important things that I was trying to emphasize weeks ago was when the Mississippi River was very, very low. And it wasn't so much about the river being low. Okay, the river is low, but what does that river do? That river is a very important link in the food chain of planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And that river is responsible for transporting tons of grain to the Gulf of Mississippi or the Gulf of Mexico, down the Mississippi River to world markets. And there for a few days, it could not transport grain.
Mm-hmm.
So that would have thrown a big wrench into things. So right now, we have to really be super cognizant of our food chain. Our food chain, if we lose one link in the food chain, whether it's from high UV, extreme weather patterns, water anomalies, all of those things could play a factor.
Sure. And we've talked about on Solutionary TV, we talked about regenerative systems in farming and in agriculture and being much more adherent to permaculture applications to how we grow things, working with nature and in
Right.
harmony with nature. We already know we're deling with problems with massive species die off and pollinator die off. And what's going on though with the magnetics and the magnetosphere of the Earth? There's a lot popping up in science. You've talked about this too. We don't have the same kind of polarity, or we have an interruptive field that seems to be emerging. Can you explain that in better than layman's terms as I'm stumbling through, Michael, so that again our audience is clear about that shift?
Okay, I'll do my best. One thing, look at Earth as a magnet, and let's say it's a magnet on a scale of 1 to 10. And let's say Earth is a 3. Well, going back to what I mentioned about 5 minutes ago about all of the spheres, and we're all on a sphere, or at least we're on a sphere, but we're in a community of spheres. And they're called Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, and on down the line, Mercury. Each sphere has a frequency, basically, or some sort of magnetic orientation to the sun, or it wouldn't be here. It's as simple as that. If it didn't, it wouldn't be here. It's part of this cosmic family. So when the room gets really crowded and everybody's over here on one side of the room or one side of the house or whatever, the magnetics, the frequency is going to get off. So it's going to affect how do I explain it? The magnetic shield of Earth is, it's grounded, but yet it's not. It's going to feel the energy of the other planets. It's going to feel the strength of Jupiter. Jupiter's got a mighty magnetic field. Mm-hmm. So you go cram Jupiter's magnetic field with Saturn's and Neptune's, even Neptune and Uranus, even though they're far out in the far reaches of the solar system, they feel the same sun that we do. We share a common bond. Mm-hmm. And when that common bond gets interrupted, I think it does influence the magnetic shields in different ways that, we don't know what to expect because we've never been down this road. So maybe like with all the planets being on the right-hand side of the sun, it creates a magnetic interference, and it does create maybe an anomaly here and there in Earth's magnetic shields, and quite possibly any planet that has a magnetic shield, So it could be a number of things. It could be our position with respect to the center of the Milky Way galaxy.
Right.
It could be a lot of different things.
Well, we know that so much of the migratory species are extremely codependent on high-functioning magnets in the brain and the ability for them to communicate as one sentient flock of birds or insects in the ground that are making sure that our soil is getting hydrated and properly propagated. So let's talk about what this is doing. Of course, we've got interplanetary climate change. There's been a lot of resource work done on that. David Wilcock's done quite a bit with wisdom teachings, being able to demonstrate what maybe French or actually mostly Russian astrophysicists and a lot of correlating data coming out of Caltech. showing, if you know where to look, and we need more channels like yours, Michael, because we have a lot of people that are not hearing about this, even in their, their top shelf Ivy League, physics classes and astronomy classes. There's not a lot of understanding about what's current, what is new science, and how it's evolving so quickly. So if we've got such a pull magnetically between the planets, and we're experiencing a difference in our own resonance as we try to calibrate with the Schumannic resonance that is definitely, fluctuating. How are you noting, based on some of the data that you're bringing in, some of the changes that just seem to be spatial? Like all of us are experiencing, a reset of our magnets or a reset of our internal calibrations. Are you pulling some of that in as an intuitive as well as a watchman, Michael?
I do. I notice my wife asks me questions all the time. She'll ask me based off of how she's feeling, her physical. She'll ask me, is Earth, she's cute. She says, are we in a coronal hole today? Because she'll have, these symptoms. And I studied that years ago, coronal holes and the effects on humans and the effects of the hydrogen atom. And we're all loaded with hydrogen atoms, and I'm like, yeah, hon, it can. It has to affect you. It affects every living creature on Earth, some different than others. And I actually did a study of, started off with the chromosome, whether you're male or female, and then we went to blood type, and then we went to your location where you lived on Earth, your age. And I did actually find some connections from all that data, but it was too much for me as one person. But I did learn something from it. There is some truth too. When coronal holes face the Earth, that energy, that unchallenged energy off the surface of the sun, when it does interact with the Earth's magnetic shields and the BZ, which is the magnetic shield's door, when it tilts south and all that energy comes into Earth, well, everything on energy everything on Earth gets bathed in that energy. You absorb it like you do UV light, and your body manages that energy much like the leaf of a flower or of a tree. And sometimes the frequency, even though you can't see it or feel it, it's amplified. So it amplifies your molecular, sequence, and you feel maybe you're extra hungry that day. Maybe you were having a little hard time getting out of bed. Maybe you had a very lucid dream. You don't know why. Maybe you couldn't go to sleep that night. It's all of the unseen. There's more of what we can't see than there is of what we can see. But what we can't see has a bigger impact on our lives than what we can see. And that's so true. It's much like where the planets are going right now. This is something that's probably never been studied, but it has to have an impact on this, especially Earth. Earth is a highly magnetized planet. And we're going to throw it over here with, even Pluto. We're all going to be over here sharing 180-degree space. Now, all of a sudden, you've got Kilauea throwing a fit on the Hawaiian Islands.
Right.
The volcanic eruption in Guatemala just yesterday, it threw a fit. And I'm sure there's probably going to be more. Right. There's geysers now up in Yellowstone that are starting to get, a little groovy. So there's some things going on. And they're reacting, much like the animals. They're reacting to something that they can't see, but they feel it.
Well, let's talk about these being signs and symptoms to what many geologists and those in the know, those with the highbrow science and the degrees have been talking about, that we're well overdue for a pole shift. And again, this isn't meant to be inflammatory. It's meant to be educational. No. We live on a sphere that is ever changing. We live in a solar system and in a universe, and some would say a multi-universe quantum field that is always having an effect on itself. So what are we really looking at when we see that bigger picture, Michael? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's always happened. We've never been here during a pole shift. So anybody, even with the highest master degree, they don't know. They can only speculate based off of what they dug up out of the ground and which way the magma was. It was pointing south, 300,000 years ago, and 700,000 years ago was pointing north. So somewhere in between there was a pole shift. Was it a magnetic shift? Was it a geophysical shift? Was it a combination of both? Once we start seeing water anomalies start to inch away from the coast a little bit, and all of a sudden it's inching away, for a day and a half, it stays gone. So that's telling me that the Earth is responding to something internally and externally. When the water starts to escape from the coastline, and I'm seeing 2,000-year-old aqueducts,
yes,
the Earth is going through a mighty change, and we're in the infancy stages of this change. And it's because the Earth feels something, much like these wildlife creatures. They feel something. My son's plant out back, it felt something. And again, it's not meant to scare anybody. We'll all be fine, but we have to intuitively, whether it's intuitively or, I've got to write it down, okay, I've got to be ready to change, and you've got to be ready for rapid change. It's occurring. Things are occurring very rapidly. And as long as you're mentally prepared, if you panic, you lose. You don't panic, you'll be great. Education is your best weapon. Just be prepared for anything, and you'll be great. But yeah, pole shift is definitely on the table. But I, like anyone else, I can only speculate. I have a lot of data I can refer to that I've collected over the years. Yeah, it's definitely a big option that's on the table. Absolutely.
It's interesting. I do believe it was Forbes magazine, and I would have had the article handy and would have referenced it. And so forgive me, but for anyone that wants to do a little research, we always love our Yahoo and our Google. I believe it was Forbes magazine that recently collated what was really kind of a fascinating little expose on the future planet based on periodic pole shifts. We do have, of course, the ice cores that demonstrate that we go through cycles and that an awful lot of the interplanetary climate change and hence, the heating up of this planet has actually been part of a larger cycle.
Right.
And cycles that we've had recorded, and we don't hear a lot about that science. Yes, we all contribute, but there are other larger, factors at work as we understand it. And so as we're kind of looking at these shifts and what becomes more typical, what was interesting is that Forbes had decided to take a look at what the science was saying would happen with a pole shift and how that might change the land masses as opposed to the water, the plains versus the mountains, coastline changes, etc. We once had Pangea, now we have this. And they're correlating it with a lot of prophetic or otherwise futuristic dreams that the population's been having, some real big prophets, some of the things that Edgar Cayce had said. And interestingly, when they created an overlap of what they would predict based on their best models, and we know that they've got really, really great data and analytics and AI and all kinds of advanced technology to be able to forecast more efficiently, there was a very similar overlay to what some of these would-be prophets and those that have been having these dreams that are stirring, that are rather lucid. Do you have any thoughts on that, Michael?
I do. Everything is cyclical. That's why we have archaeologists, unfortunately. We have to dig up our ancient past, but everything is cyclical. It's just it's very debatable on exactly what time frame the cyclical pattern begins and ends, and what the motivating influencer is, or the main influencer is. I know a lot of people are they want to argue the rogue planet. Well, I'm kind of on board with that, and I'm not. It could
Are we
be
talking about Nibiru or Planet Nine, Planet X, that type of thing?
Yeah, I mean, okay. It could be a number of things, like that with regard to. But we have rogue planets right near us right now, and in a sense, they're rogue. I mean, yeah, we're family with Jupiter, we're family with Mars and all them, but they're very close to us. So a planet comes through, that's 30 million miles away. It's not going to affect Earth. Now, if we have a binary star, could that be the influencer of this cyclical pattern that we go through every 3,600 years? How did humans come so far in, the last 100 years, opposed to why did we just sit around with sticks and stones for 2,000? I mean, how did we come so far so fast? There's something that has really motivated our way of thinking, and we're trying to escalate, try to get to another planet. We're trying to get to Mars very quickly. There's been many, many rocket launches here in the last 6 months. There's been more in 6 months, I think, than there's been in 6 years.
Yes.
So, you know what I mean? There's a very big increase that they know. I think they know, somebody knows probably, that this time frame is, it's getting close to, it's getting obvious. Just look around, look at the weather patterns. So yeah, but as far as the main influencer, I don't know. I'm a second sun. I'm a dual sun man. I believe that no solar system anywhere in the universe is even possible without dual suns. I think it takes dual suns to make all of this work. And I think at times that second sun, you may never be able to see it. That's where I get People say, oh yeah, you can see it, yada yada yada. I don't think that necessarily that's true. I think it takes extreme mathematics to even find it, and then once your mathematics are accurate, you still may not be able to see it even with the best telescopes.
Right.
But 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 the energies of your cosmic neighborhood definitely feel its presence,
Mm-hmm.
because before, it may have been 100 light years away, and now it's only 2 light years away. And it's got a huge influence on your star. When
Mm-hmm.
it's 100 light years away, your star burns orange, and it burns in different ratios.
Mm-hmm.
And now that it's 2 light years away, your star is burning in different ratios. So your planet's going to experience different ratios and different frequencies. And it doesn't know how to, it's a change. It will adapt.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I more lean towards the binary star that could have orbitals, much like our star has orbitals. And I think it does have an influence. I think all solar systems everywhere have dual, if not maybe triple star systems. They have to. I think that's how they move through all of this things that we know as a galaxy. I think that's how they are actually propelled. So,
Right. And we've had a lot of rumors or very specific speculations from high minds about being in a binary star system. Now,
right.
tell me how that plays into, and this is where my science kind of, hits the wall, and I'm looking to those that have got a deeper background in it. As we are moving as a solar system, following a sun that is not stationary, despite how many of us were taught about the nature of the solar system
Right.
in our education, it is always moving and at a great velocity as it is in its elliptic around the Milky Way galaxy. Sometimes we're
Right.
way out in the boondocks, but we haven't been out there for like a good, 12,000, 13,000 years. Right now, we're awfully close to the center of the Milky Way galaxy. Isn't
Right.
there a central sun that we share as maybe at least an influence, if not a direct respondent to being that second binary system? Aren't we also going to be impacted by the suns as we move, closer to the center of the Milky Way galaxy, if there is a central sun?
Yes, it's much like what I saw in Hydra back in 2012, 2013. I saw it the first half of 2014, and that very well could have been an aspect of that second sun, or the central sun that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been maybe a scout of the second sun. But I did see it. I saw it 90 different times. And during that time, it was in 2012, and I wasn't looking for it. I just happened to be outside and I saw it. Then after that, I honed in on it, so to speak, and I got to watching it every night for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And it was quite a treat. But it was something very, very strong.
Mm-hmm.
Red and blue. They were red 1 minute, blue the next, and it was a natural artifact. It wasn't anything man-made. It looked like a little cloud, but it would change colors, and it looked very, very strong. But I do think it was part of something greater,
Mm-hmm.
and we had moved near it, and the Earth felt it. It felt the presence of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't necessarily. Not everybody saw it. You had to look in a specific place. You stare at a dark patch of sky, and then you would see it only between the hours of 9:34 and 10:08 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And then after 7 nights, you wouldn't see it because the Earth had moved. Yeah.
And that's part of the issue. It is not only that we're getting better instrumentation, and I think that any member of society is getting better at knowing how to utilize equipment to be able to see.
Mm-hmm.
We're all correlating and communicating,
Correct.
with our data, with the web being as proficient a tool as it is. Do you think that it's more new discoveries or just better understanding for the layperson, so that what isn't shared with us, we're learning for ourselves? Like this whole new black hole. We've got this black hole that they can finally measure that is
Right.
got a huge gravitational pull.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to all these planets lining up on one side of the sun, you kind of have to look at all of these factors at play. Right, Michael?
Correct. And that's the thing. You bring up a good point. There are a lot of factors at play here, and it can be overwhelming. And that's why I put together the website that I did in the order I did. I put that together in a way that I feel, from years of experience and years of chasing down all of those links to connect dots and to learn, I put them in order, and they're all live links,
Mm-hmm.
and they're all updated. Every time you refresh the page, it's new data. And it can be overwhelming, but if you can learn the basics, then you can you can separate and keep things in their classification where they need to be. This is a priority. This is, prioritize things because it can be overwhelming. Sometimes there's too much information out there and it can get overwhelming and a bit confusing.
Mm-hmm.
The website is a great start. That's a website that was built off of years of experience. And I think I prioritize things on that website as if you want to learn and you want to keep track of the energies and things that are changing, it's a great place to start your day.
Direct everyone there, Michael. Would you let them know the best places to find your work? Because we're going to jump around and maybe some of them can throw up their computers. Let them know where to reach you.
The website is mrmbb333.com. And it's a website that it's a watchman's website. That's what my wife calls it, a watchman's website, because it is in literal sense. That's what it is. From years of experience and years of being mentored by wise men that were in their 90s, that most of them, like I said earlier, had forgotten more about life than a lot of us will ever know. They're very, very wise men. And I look up to these men. They taught me a lot. They taught me how to treat others and about respect and about learning. And if you want to learn, God will point you in the right direction, but you have to, stay humble. And, it's the information's there. I don't think that men will ever understand, how all of this works, even though we try and we want to learn. I don't think men, even the most eager and motivated men, there's just too much to learn, there really truly is. We can get close, but man, only God can condense time, space, and matter all at the same time and make it all work at once. We can understand time or, and space and matter, but putting it all together and make it all work as a unified, it's just impossible. And it's always changing. That's the thing, the sun's always changing, the earth's always changing. At the website, mrmbb333.com, if you go there, you can keep up with those changes because they are updated every time you go there. So those changes, they're right there. If you want to see them, you're not going to be surprised in a month or 2 months or 3 months. If you go there, you click on it, you see the change. Well, it was different 2 hours ago or it was different a week ago. It's greater, it's less. You'll notice those changes right there at your fingertips.
I'd love to know your thoughts on a particular query that I have got, Michael. I have not only heard how the Schumannic resonance and the changes in the magnetic fields are impacting us. So in other words, nature around us, our environment is conditioning us as it changes, which makes sense. But I've seen some very compelling scientific data that has been very well peer reviewed and researched and correlated again and again that demonstrates that when we have peak human events on this planet that may look like an assassination, or they may look like the beginning of a war, or some other human, heavily emotionally charged event, that the Earth equally seems to respond, and her resonance jumps in response to us. What are your thoughts about this cohesiveness we have?
That's very true. I've read that also, and there's also patterns and trends on the web. There's this guy that's developed this web bot that also tracks these trends with humans, and sometimes he'll connect a dot with a human natural, or not, I'm sorry, an earthly natural disaster or natural event. But yes, humans are very, very connected to their planet, and a lot of people don't know just how strongly they are connected to their planet. Absolutely, that's 100% correct. More so than I think we'll ever really understand. But oh, no, I definitely agree with you on that 100%.
Well, with the studies that have been done on the Maharishi effect, where we have, anywhere from thousands to tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands coming together to meditate in a very peaceful and, again, very cooperative space where we are creating reciprocity amongst ourselves. And we know that we can build quantum fields. It makes sense that if we can lower crime, if we can create a trend that, again, can be demonstrated where there is less violent crime, more peace, less calls into the police, that we're also having an impact on the earth. And with all the earth changes, perhaps being able to have access to this amazing information that you're providing others through education allows us to get past the denial and the cognitive dissonance. Yes, change is happening. This is a part of the cycles of the planet and the intelligence of spheres. And how can I be working cooperatively to bring more peace and stability rather than aggravate or further
Right.
exacerbate that tension
Right.
building. Wouldn't you say, Michael?
Absolutely. That's what we talked about earlier. Understanding and knowledge is your very best shield, against all of this. It's your very best coat of arms. Knowledge. And sometimes we need it in small doses, big doses of anything. I don't care what it is. It's not good for you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, the website, there's other great places to get information out there. Good, trustworthy information. And if, like you said, if we all resonate those same good vibes, good things tend to happen. We are not going to change the cycles of Earth, unfortunately. It's been doing this for thousands of years, but our visit while we're on here can be a better experience. I agree totally. If everybody were to resonate at that same, like we say, we walk into a room, you feel a bad vibe or whatever, I mean, that's very real. I mean, it's so real.
Yeah.
So collectively, like you said, hundreds of thousands of people get together. Absolutely. It affects, different things. I understand that, but is it going to stop the cycles that Earth goes through? Even as mighty as the Egyptians and the Maya civilizations were, and the Maya were the one, I think, that were onto this whole 2012 thing. I don't really know. I think it was the Maya.
The Mayan calendar, the great Mayan calendar that talks about the end of a cycle. And, in other faiths, Buddha's, Hindu is the end of these yugas. All of the ancient faiths, and I want to say not religion, I'm not talking dogma, I'm talking about as if they held pure truth and then they just used different vernacular, Michael, to understand that we go through seasons. And that there is loss of life very often during these changes, but it creates a reset. And maybe the Earth needs to shift in her resonance for her own growth because she's alive, as we know. I want to touch on another because we're rounding up at the end of the hour. You are one of those brave souls in this whole era of disclosure. We've got all of this focus on disclosure and greater awareness about what our government's been doing with these, several $1 trillion that have been lost here, there, and everywhere and not coming up in budgets, that we have had a lot of the taxpayers' money go into black budgets around dealing with reverse engineering extraterrestrial or, unidentified aerial phenomena craft that is crashed and technology and science that's available. You do receive submissions from your audience and your listeners for unusual aerial phenomena. Tell our listeners a little bit about that and maybe what's the most spectacular thing that's come up recently.
Oh, there's been several. As far as the phenomenon, even mentioning the word UFO years ago, they coined you, gave you a label as a crazy person,
you
because
get scorned.
Absolutely, and you may say it in the most utmost humility. You saw something you couldn't explain. You didn't. It didn't resonate with you. I personally have seen things that I cannot explain. I do get correspondence all the time from people that see things all over the world. So it's a very real phenomenon. People can debunk it all that they want, but there are things that are unexplained. Unfortunately, about 90% of them are explainable. It could be a reflection. I do see a lot of reflections that come in, especially with regard to photographing extreme sunlight. 99% of those are going to be reflections. But I do get a lot of correspondence of things that are not related to the sun. In fact, I've got one on my desktop right here I'm looking at that a man photographed something by accident above the moon, and it was a massive triangle, and it's very real. I've actually seen one myself, but that was back in October of last year. I wasn't looking for that. I was looking for the object in Hydra, and here it came. But, I looked at that thing. I couldn't believe what I saw, but instantly I knew it would solve our pollution problems if jet airplanes were, if we were polluting the atmosphere as bad as they say we are with hydrocarbons. This thing didn't use hydrocarbon fuel. It drove off of, like you said earlier, it was reverse engineered from something, and it was using the Earth's energy to travel because it made no sound. It was massive, and it flew over south of my town, and it was probably less than a quarter mile away from me. And if it wouldn't have tilted, I wouldn't have seen it. It blended in with the night sky. I was outside at 5:20 a.m. looking at Hydra. It was rising in the eastern sky, October 14th, and that can be verified on a star chart. And I was looking to the east southeast, and all of a sudden this thing tilted. I didn't know it was there. It tilted to the left, and it was going south, and it made no sound, and it was big as a Costco building. And it was,
I
it was
remember
huge.
that broadcast, Michael. And you know, the
Yes,
truth is, I don't know why there would still be the criticism or the sarcasm now. I mean, we have had a full disclosure that came out, you know, the end of last year.
Yeah.
To the Stars Academy is all about taking these former DOD, Pentagon, Lockheed Martin experts and saying, hey, guess what? Oopsie, for the safety of the public, we've got 70 plus years. And that's all they're telling us. And we know that generally we hear about probably less than 10% of what's actually real. So we understand we have this technology. We've had Tesla technology and so many other aspects for a long time. I just want to read a little quote. This is from Ben Rick, the second director of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works. He stated this in 1993 during an alumni speech at UCLA. And I'm going to quote, "We already have the means to travel among the stars, but these technologies are locked in black projects, and it would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do." So this is one of many quotes. We've got all kinds of things going on right now with Elon Musk saying there's less than, I don't know, an 80 millionth percent chance that we are in a base reality and everything looks like a hologram or a great thought. And everything's changing and all bets are off about being overly predictive. But given the amount of disclosure that's going on right now, I think it's exciting that you've got people that are submitting things that would have otherwise been ridiculed, would have been scorned. And I'm just going to throw in, I actually sent you something, and you and I haven't chatted about this, and our viewers don't know about it. But I've seen many things in the sky, and I've had my own personal witness to what I would consider to be interdimensional or extra dimensional. But I think that the amount of viewings that are taking place in the sky has definitely ramped up. And just May, I believe it was 7th, the morning of, I'm in Branson, Missouri. I'm overlooking this beautiful, beautiful view, a mountain view looking down onto the city. And two particular lights came in as bright as double the size of Venus at about 8 in the morning, looking up into a perfectly blue sky. And then I saw them start to battle with each other. They looked like enormous, bright, brilliant orbs, and they would, power up, and then they would shrink, and they were moving around. Next thing you know, one's shooting off blue laser electricity, the other one's off gassing, and they were moving in the most erratic way. I would love to know what it is, if it's not unidentified aerial phenomenon that we've reverse engineered or that we've got visitors. I'd love to hear it, but what I've come to find is most people look up in the sky and something in their mind turns off, and we call it cognitive dissonance, and they say, that doesn't look like anything to me. They're not quite ready to see it. And so your work is so powerful because it gives everybody a safe place to kind of disseminate line upon line, doesn't it, Michael?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And you know what? Everyone's welcome. Everybody is welcome. And, I've seen things like you that I can't explain. There's some things that, I got something today, in fact. It was something I saw back in 2008. And again, I wasn't looking for it. And there it was. And I'd never seen anything like it. And today,
tell us about it. What is it, Michael?
It was a blue orb I saw in the sky. We were at a birthday party over at a friend's house. Young man, actually he's about my age, but he has autism, and he works at the local grocery store, and he was talking about groceries. We became friends, just a really good guy, lives with his parents, and he's like 40, so he liked to bowl. He was telling me about his bowling skills. So we started taking him bowling and became friends with his family. Well, it was his sister's birthday, so we took a gift over and just had a piece of cake. And I went outside and was standing by the car, and the car was facing south. And I was just standing there. At the time, I smoked. I don't smoke anymore. I quit smoking years ago, but I was out there just having a smoke. Wasn't thinking of anything, looking to the south, and all of a sudden, it, like you said, interdimensional, but it looked flat. It looked like a one-dimensional object. It was a round blue sphere that came up and stopped like that about 20 degrees on the southern horizon. And it came down through the atmosphere and then stopped vertically, and it was round. And it was like alive. I know it sounds strange, but it looked like a living organism, like a cell, but it was round. And I'll send you a picture when we're done here, because the guy sent me a picture of one today, and I couldn't believe it. It was the first time I'd actually seen another one. And I showed my wife, I said, there's what I saw. because I got a hold of her. And at the time, I didn't have an iPhone. I had a little flip phone.
Mm-hmm.
So I took out my flip phone just to call her. I said, come out. You got to see this. And she goes, what is it? I said, I have no idea. And about 2 minutes later, she come down the driveway of their house. And as she was coming out to the road, it backed up and went straight up out of the top of the atmosphere.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't believe what
it got shy on you, Michael. I guess it didn't want to be witnessed by everyone, did it?
No. And I sit there and looked at that thing for just a little over 2 minutes, and it drifted slowly from west to east. Maybe it was about 20 degrees off the ground, off the horizon, and it moved maybe 10 degrees from west to east. And I'm like, oh, wow, that was really, really cool. Well, today a man sent me a picture, and it's the same thing, only it's behind some clouds. So you can definitely tell it's in the sky. It's not a reflection because it doesn't involve the sun or the moon. It's just in the sky behind some clouds. I'm like, there you are. I haven't seen you for almost it's been 10 years now.
Yes.
There you are. And
Yes.
it's the same thing. And it's round. It's difficult to judge size because distance is so hard to grasp.
Yes.
But it's pretty good size. I'll send you a picture later, but I actually saw that in 2007. It was my son was 5 months old. It was November of 2007. So it's been 11 years now, almost 11 years. Pretty cool, though. So I
would
knew
love
then.
to see it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really neat. It's very real. I saw it back then, couldn't explain it. And that was when I kind of, after that, I'm like, wait a minute. That shouldn't have happened. Whatever that was, that shouldn't have happened, but it did.
Yeah.
I know it did because I don't drink or do drugs. I just standing here and I don't even smoke anymore. I'm actually kind of boring other than studying. So I'm looking at like, that didn't just happen, but it did.
You know,
So
I'm not surprised to hear it because you hear James Gilliland in particular do a lot with ECETI and the orbs, these living orbs, that as if like the ship is alive or that it is connected to a living driver or occupant. And if you look at any of William Henry's work with Arcanum on Gaia TV or anything that Corey Good's been saying about blue spheres, we throughout human history, again, into the esoteric teachings, there are energies and beings that travel in blue spheres. They create like these little singularities or wormholes, and it sounds really spot on with what you're talking about.
It had this real vague sparkle to it. And a guy told me, because I talked to anybody and everybody about it, I wasn't bashful because what I saw, I knew was very real. Guy told me it was phasing down its energy, and I wasn't supposed to see it, but I actually did. And he said it was going through a phase, and it was collecting energy from the planet, and it traveled interdimensionally, could do whatever. And I said it could do whatever it wanted. And he said, oh yeah, it could do whatever it wanted. And one lady, she said, you need to look at the ancient flower of life, because I was describing it to this one lady. You know what? Identical match.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And then we've got all of these crop circles, Michael, that seem to be indicative of them trying to tell us, hey, we're here.
Right.
We're checking stuff out. We're interested in you. We come and go. We might have gotten a bit further than y'all have, but changes are happening. I think we're getting visited a lot because they know that big change is happening.
So. And you know what? They may have been here before us. I mean, I mean, you know, if you really look at it objectively and with a full open mind, who's to say they weren't here before us?
Right.
You know, if they're, but that thing I saw, I'm telling you right now, when I looked at the ancient flower of life, that's what I saw.
Right.
If I had to draw a picture of it, that's what I would draw. And I'd never seen anything like it before, especially in the sky.
Right.
But it was very real. And it had a faint little glisten, like it just glistened just a little bit, like it had life. You know, it had energy. It definitely had energy.
You send me that so I can post it for our viewers. Yes,
I got it right here on my desktop. In fact,
awesome.
I was amazed that somebody else actually saw it.
Michael, we could go on for a whole other hour, and I recognize for our viewers and staying concise, I'm heartbroken we have to take this to an end. You and I could definitely come back and do a follow-up, and so please stay open to that.
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
It has been such a pleasure having you here. We're already 6 minutes past the hour in respective time, your time. I want to just have our audience recognize this is important information that Michael is getting out there. He is the Earth Watchman. He's working with others. They are advocating and for our behalf trying to get this really concise information out there so that we can be more prepared and be a lot more conscious as we walk the earth. Tell everybody real quickly again, Michael, how to get to your website.
The website is mrmbb333.com.
All right.
Once again, mrmbb333.com. And I think there's a little bit of something there for everyone.
Oh, I undoubtedly agree. In fact, I haven't even begun to fully explore it. It's just been so much to take in. Thank you, Michael. It's really been an honor having you with us tonight.
Thank you. It was my pleasure.
My pleasure as well. And I just want to tell our audience, remember where you find this amazing content. Choose to support the places that you can get the answers that you're seeking. And remember that together, we are the solution.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.